21 Sinister Tales to uncover at midnight. 3 hours of cursed rain sounds revealed, the world outside felt like it was ending. Sarah Davidson peered through the rain-slicked window of her Ashford Hollow home. Panicked shadows danced across the walls, flickering with the light of candles, her only source of warmth and safety on this stormy night. The wind howled like a banshee, rattling the very bones of the house, a ghostly chorus for the turbulence in her heart. When her phone rang, its shrill sound sliced through the oppressive air, bringing with it a jolt of fear. "Sarah?" It was Mr. Ullman, her eccentric neighbor. "You need to listen closely. Your ex, he's back." His voice trembled slightly, a hint of dread lurking beneath his friendly facade. "People are talking, whispers of his past." The storm outside matched her racing pulse. She bit her lip, knowing this wasn't good. The rain hammered against her windows, each drop echoing her spiraling anxiety. How could she keep her children safe? Evan and Lily were tucked in on the couch, playing a game, oblivious to the terror that lurked. She forced a smile, heart pounding. But then, from the corner of her eye, she noticed branches from the old oak outside twisted unnaturally, swaying back and forth like they had a mind of their own. The power flickered again, shadows stretching grotesquely across the living room. Evan glanced up, eyes wide. "Mom, it's getting scary." He held Lily close, a fragile shield against the storm outside. Desperate to reclaim a sense of normalcy, she tried to fill the thick silence with laughter, but it rang hollow, each chuckle echoing with a clear undercurrent of dread. "What if we invite Mr. Ullman over?" she suggested, desperately seeking comfort. But as she stepped outside, rain streaking down her face, neighbors peeked through closed curtains, faces pale and uncertain. Their silence gnawed at her like a festering wound. The storm was not the only thing churning in Ashford Hollow. She returned inside, tossing a nervous glance at the window. Was her ex really out there? The wind shrieked in response, as if laughing at her fears. Just then, a loud thud from the backyard froze her blood. Heart racing, she offered a silent prayer. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." She turned to find Mr. Ullman had appeared on her porch, his eyes glinting with an unsettling kind of wisdom. "The oak tree," he began, "it holds secrets. You know, this town has its legends, stories buried beneath our feet." He leaned closer, his breath clouded with urgency. "Your ex isn't just a man. He's a shadow that tears through stories of curses and dark whispers." A chill swept through her, icy fingers creeping down her spine. Memories stirred, old fears surfacing like specters. "I can't let him get to my kids," she whispered, voice trembling. Suddenly, those same trees swayed menacingly, roots entwined with forbidden tales, the storm thundering louder as shadows pooled around her feet. Just then, she heard it, a voice, thin as the rain pounding down, calling from the yard, "It's time to come home, Sarah." The world spun as icy dread seized her heart. She felt it in the air, something more sinister than her ex was on the prowl. With the storm deepening, darkness curled ever closer, and she knew, in that moment, the true horror had only just begun. The wind shrieked again, slicing through the night like a knife. Sarah backed away from the door, heart hammering against her ribs. "Mr. Ullman, did you hear that?" she gasped, her breaths coming shallow and quick. His expression shifted, the arrogance of certainty faltering into raw fear. It sounded like no, it couldn't be. He turned, eyes darting toward the thick darkness beyond the yard, straining against the layers of rain and shadows. "She said they would come for you," he whispered, voice trembling. Before she had the chance to process, a clash of thunder interrupted, a fierce crack splitting the atmosphere as a sudden flash of lightning revealed something lurking among the trees. For a moment, her eyes locked onto figures twisted and distorted by the storm's wrath, shadows that seemed alive, entwined with the skeletal branches of the oak. "Get inside!" Mr. Ullman barked, urgency jarring her back to reality. The protective instincts of a mother swelled inside her, a primal scream urging her to shield her children. The flicker of candles threatened to extinguish as she raced back into the warmth of her home, slamming the door shut behind her. Evan and Lily watched her, eyes wide, confusion etched across their small faces. "Mom? What's happening?" Evan's voice trembled, the innocence in it shattering her resolve. "Nothing. Just a storm," she lied, swallowing her fear. Yet, she could feel it, the truth seeped into her skin, poisonous and vile. Outside, the voice called again, echoing through the deluge, softer yet commanding, "Sarah, come home." The children jumped at the sound, Lily pressing her face into Evan's shoulder. "I don't like it," she cried. Sarah gritted her teeth, moving to block the window. The oak tree loomed significantly in the dark, a foreboding presence, still swaying in a rhythmic dance with the winds. "Why don't we play a game?" she suggested, fighting the rising panic. "How about we bang?" A deafening crash shattered the moment, echoing from the backyard. "Mom! What was that?" Evan's voice rose in pitch. "Stay here. Don't move," she commanded, forcing herself toward the door again. Each step felt weighted, as if the house itself was against her. She peered out through the rain-soaked glass, scanning the shadows. Her breath caught when she thought she saw a figure at the edge of the oak tree, a shape half seen, a glimpse of familiarity sending icy tendrils down her spine. Then, her phone buzzed in her pocket, vibrating incessantly. She pulled it out, eyes darting back to the window, as if the two could coexist without consequence. A text from an unknown number glowed ominously. "He's not just back, he's here and he wants more than you think." The blood drained from her face. Something twisted in her gut, a gnawing dread. The wind outside howled again, drowning out her thoughts, filling her with a sense of foreboding she couldn't shake. It wasn't just the storm anymore. It was something alive, something that hungered. She pulled Evan and Lily to her tightly. "We're going to stay together. No matter what," she said, the words coming out steadier than she felt. But as the darkness began to bleed into her home, soaked in secrets and shadows, she knew the battle was just starting. The door rattled violently, creaking under an unseen force, and suddenly they heard it, a guttural laugh, low and mocking, laced with malevolence. "Your past will always find you," Sarah. Terror gripped her like a vice. What had she unleashed? What had she truly brought back to Ashford Hollow? Just as she thought to barricade the door, icy fingers carded through her hair, and a voice hissed in her ear, "Come out, come home." Every instinct screamed for her to flee, but she knew there was nowhere to run. The shadows were already waiting. The pounding on the door grew louder, rhythmic like a war drum, each thud reverberating through Sarah's chest. Evan whimpered, clutching Lily tightly. They exchanged fearful glances, questions pooling in their innocent eyes. "Mom, what's happening?" Evan whispered again, his voice barely above the howling wind. "Just a storm, sweetheart," she said, the reply tasting bitter on her tongue. She could almost feel the shadows swimming behind her, watching, waiting. Each moment stretched, time thick as molasses, as dread brewed in the air. The laughter outside twisted into a cacophony of whispers, melding with the rustling branches. "Come out, Sarah, come home." The words slithered into her mind like venom. She couldn't remember the last time something had felt so wrong, so painfully familiar. "Mom." Lily's voice broke through the haze of fear. "I'm scared." "I know, sweetheart, I know." Sarah forced her voice to sound steady. It felt like trying to hold back an avalanche. She glanced toward the window again, her body screaming for her not to, but she had to know. The scene outside was chaos. The curtains of rain warped the world into blurred shapes. For a split second, where the oak tree should stand, she thought she saw a face, pale and distorted, the empty eyes locking onto hers. "Stop it!" she shouted at the window, panic spilling from her mouth. "You don't belong here." But deep down, an unsettling feeling stirred. They felt like memories clawing their way back into reality. The door rattled again, an angry growl from whatever lurked outside. Then silence, thick and suffocating. Sarah held her breath, the air suddenly heavy with something she couldn't name. She turned to her children, who were still frozen in place, eyes wide and unblinking. "We need to move. If they get in," the thought left her throat dry, a lump of dread settling heavily in her stomach. The scraping sound of nails against wood made her blood run cold. She grabbed the chair by the dining table, dragging it, her nails screeching against the polished floor as she wedged it under the doorknob. The chair wobbled precariously but held, for now. "Stay close," she urged, guiding Evan and Lily to the counter, where they huddled under shadows of their own. But darkness wasn't just outside anymore, it was creeping inside. Flickering candlelight cast jumpy shapes across the walls, blurring the lines of her reality. And then, from the depths of the shadows, she heard it again. Sarah, it was soft, barely a whisper, but it echoed in her bones. The voice was hauntingly familiar. She squeezed her eyes shut, mentally scrambling through memories she'd buried deep. Footsteps pounded on the porch. Blood thrummed in her ears, drowning out the storm as she pressed her hand to her mouth, swallowing a scream that threatened to erupt. Mr. Ullman's figure splashed through the rain, head bobbing into view. "Sarah! Let me in!" he shouted, his coat plastered against his body, eyes wild with terror. But something shifted inside her, a memory, a warning. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, the words meant for herself. But was it too late? The door shuddered beneath the force of something unholy. The chair thudded against the floor as fear shattered Sarah's steadiness. What had she unleashed upon her family? The walls began to close in, shadows reaching, twisting around her, a cacophony of voices now, all chanting. "Come home, Sarah, your past awaits." The dark promise loomed large, ready to swallow her whole. At that moment, the lights flickered and dimmed. The whispers intensified, clawing at her consciousness, lifting her thoughts. In desperation, she reached for her phone again, a feeble lifeline in the chaos. One text. Just one could unravel the truth. As she typed, "What do you want?" and hit send, a chilling gust of wind blew through the cracks in the house, snuffing out the last candle's flicker. The world plunged into darkness. A chilling laugh echoed once more, a sound that would haunt her dreams. Would the past continue to chase her? Or would it finally confront her? In the silence that followed, the children squeezed her hands as she felt the weight of the shadows inch closer. More than an echo of guilt and regret, they required her to make a choice, one she had hoped was buried forever. Was the past ready to claim her? And who would she become if she didn't run? The darkness thickened like a heavy fog, pressing against Sarah's chest. Heart racing, she gripped Evan and Lily tighter. The air felt electric, charged with dread as the whispers coiled around her, drawing nearer. "Come home, Sarah," they pleaded, their voices intertwining, an invitation laced with malice. "Listen to me," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, but it quivered. "We need to stay quiet. No matter what happens, do not make a sound." She glanced toward the window. Despite the storm, it had turned unnaturally still. Shadows danced outside, morphing into a darkness that seemed alive. A splash of white caught her eye, the flash of something pale darting between the trees. Panic surged within her again. Whatever it was close. A soft thud echoed from the back door, drawing her attention. Sarah turned slowly, fear slithering down her spine. The door widened slightly, caught by the wind. She swiveled back to the children just as a chilling breeze swept through the kitchen. Goosebumps prickled her skin. Mom Lily squeaked, her small voice laced with anxiety. "No, we're okay. Just stay close." Sarah swallowed hard, determination flickering to life. Sarah, the voice, now unmistakably hers, came again deeper, closer. It sang through the darkness, almost tenderly. She felt it wrap around her, tugging relentlessly at memories she had suffocated in silence. "Don't listen," she snapped, shaking her head as if to rid herself of the intrusive thoughts. But as she glanced toward the door, her stomach churned. There stood Mr. Ullman, looking through the tiny gap, his eyes wide with sinister purpose. "Let me in, Sarah." "No!" she shouted, the word ripping from her throat like a curse. His gaze shifted, the hint of a grin curling on his lips. "Come home." In that moment, the children froze, terrified. Shadows fanned out around her, creeping closer than ever. She felt trapped, like a butterfly in a jar. The sound of her heartbeat echoed in her ears. She lunged toward the back door, locking it with trembling hands. Just as she spun back, the front door slammed open, revealing a wind-whipped figure. Evan screamed, a sound that rang through the stillness, shattering her last shreds of resolve. The man stood tall, drenched to the bone, but it wasn't Mr. Ullman. It was someone else, his face twisted and contorted. Sarah's pulse thundered in her ears as he stepped forward, imposing and hunched. "Don't you remember me, Sarah?" His voice slithered like ice. "You brought me back. Get away from us." She grabbed Lily and Evan, pulling them behind her, a desperate barrier against the nightmare. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaky yet defiant. A sharp laugh split the air, slicing through the tension. "You've forgotten so much, but I remember everything. It's time to face what you left behind." The wind howled, and the house itself seemed to shudder. In a heartbeat, the walls throbbed to life, shadows reaching out like fingers clawing for her. "No!" Sarah couldn't help herself, she bolted toward the kitchen, her resolve waning with every step. The world spun chaotically around her, and she felt the dizzying pull of the past beckoning her back. The dark figure followed, unyielding and relentless. Just as she thought she'd lost her grip, she spotted her phone lying on the floor. Adrenaline surged again. In frantic movements, she picked it up, her fingers slipping over the screen as she hit call and searched for anyone. But before she could press the button, the shadows engulfed the room. An icy grip closed around her throat, the wind howling a mournful tune as the figure loomed over her, whispering darkly, "You're never leaving. Help us." Evan squeaked, small and fragile against the abominations closing in. With one last surge of strength, Sarah clenched her phone, ready to call out, but the darkness swallowed her voice, drowning her in a sea of memories. Would the past finally take what belonged to it? The figure grinned wider, his cold breath ghosting against her skin. But just as the darkness seemed unstoppable, her phone rang a bright light. Flashing against the dark. It was a name she hadn't seen in years. A name that could change everything. Who had answered? What did they want from her now? The ringing sliced through the tension like glass. Sarah's heart raced as she froze, phone clutched tight. She stared at the screen, eyes wide. Who could it be? A flicker of uncertainty crossed her mind, the shadows swirling around her like hungry serpents. Just as she mustered the courage to answer, the figure that had materialized in her home moved closer, a creeping mass of despair and menace. "Answer it, Sarah," he hissed, his voice a cruel whisper that seeped into her ears. "Let us see who truly cares for you." With a shaky breath, she touched the screen, her thumb hovering above the answer button. The ringing stopped, leaving an unsettling silence broken only by the howling wind. "Hello?" Her voice was a whisper, barely a sound above the storm. Sarah, the voice on the other end was deep but familiar, sending chills racing down her spine. You need to remember before it's too late. Brian? She breathed, a name that echoed in her mind, buried deep. Memories cascaded through her: laughter, warmth, a bond shattered by circumstances she buried long ago. Listen carefully, he urged, urgency dripping from his words. You're in danger. They're coming for you. You can't let them take you. Sarah felt the figure's presence grow heavier. The shadows pressed in closer, fingers brushing against her skin, cold and clammy. What do you mean? Who's coming? She tried to keep her voice steady, fighting against the encroaching terror. Your past is tied to this, Sarah. Remember the night you thought you lost everything? The choice you made. What choice? Panic clawed at her throat, nearly choking her. Trust your instincts. The memories they want to devour are what you must hold on to. Brian's voice turned frantic. But just as he said those last words, the line crackled and sputtered. Sarah, the call dropped, the last echoes of his warning swallowed by the storm. She raised her head to find the figure standing mere inches away, eyes like dark pits, hunger emanating from every pore. Who was it? He growled, looming over her, his breath a gust of cold wind. Go away, Sarah said, defiance laced with desperation. Do you really think they can save you? He took a step closer, the shadows roiling behind him like a living cloak. They can't even protect themselves. Suddenly, Evan screamed again, pointing toward the window. A shape loomed just beyond the glass, a pale figure standing amidst the trees, watching, waiting. No! Sarah shouted, lurching forward, pushing the children behind her, trying to shield them from the horror closing in. But the figure at the window didn't move, just stood there, eyes glimmering with something sinister. Sarah's heart raced as she fought to keep her eyes on the man in her home, refusing to give way to that frigid gaze outside. Blood pounding in her ears, she fished wildly through her memories, trying to grasp the truth of Brian's warning. What choice? What had she done? Suddenly, the darkness swelled, folding in on itself like a collapsing star. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony in her mind, drowning out everything else. Remember, remember. It sounded like a chant, urging her to recall the moments she'd tried to forget. The shadow man reached out, his fingers brushing against her arm, sending shockwaves of terror through her body. She felt everything within slipping through her fingers, her connection to reality fraying. Make a choice, Sarah, he crooned, the words dripping with malice. Will you remember or be consumed? For a fleeting moment, clarity cut through the chaos, a single thought. She had to choose to remember. Who are you? She shouted, forcing the words between gasps, taking a step back. What do you want? His grin widened, sharp enough to cut through the darkness. You'll find out soon enough. The walls trembled, the room swirling with shadows and the breath of past horrors circling like vultures. Sarah's phone slipped from her fingers, crashing to the floor. The screen shattered like her last thread of hope. Just then, the pale figure outside stepped closer to the house. What awaited her behind that door? What did the night still hold, lurking in the corners of her mind? And how far would she have to go to reclaim what was lost? The pale figure outside pressed against the glass, a deathly stillness clinging to it like a fog. Sarah's mind raced, fighting against panic. What did Brian mean? What choice? She felt her grip on reality splintering as the whispers deepened, a dark symphony of her past. Sarah, the figure inside said, a low growl resonating as he shivered with anticipation. You can't hide from what you became. Her pulse quickened. The children huddled behind her, their breaths shallow, fear palpable in the air. She glanced back at Evan, who was wide-eyed, clutching his sister tightly. They needed to move, to escape the darkness closing in. Stay here. She shouted, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. She edged toward the window, eyes locked on the figure outside. Its features twisted and shifted, a grotesque parody of a familiar face slowly morphing into her nightmares. "Sarah," it whispered, and she recoiled as the voice filled her with dread. Not Brian. Not him. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness before a dim hue flickered back to life. In that brief moment, Sarah thought she saw the pale figure step closer, mouth opening wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Instinctively, she backed away, feeling the cold breath of shadows whisper past her ears. "Where are you going?" the shadow man asked, his smile cruel. "You can't run from yourself." "Shut up," Sarah shouted back, forcing herself to breathe. She couldn't let him break her. Not now. She had to remember. But how? The chant echoed anew, "Remember, remember, remember what?" She cried, frustration boiling over. "What am I supposed to remember?" There was a night a choice that changed everything. Brian's voice echoed in the recesses of her mind, spurring a flicker of recognition. She pressed her fingers to her temples, trying to piece together shadowed memories. There was a party. She had a drink, laughter surrounding her, but then she had walked away. What had she seen? A glimpse of something horrible, something she wished to forget. "Do you want to save your children?" the shadow man asked, looming closer, eyes glinting like knives in the dark. "Or will you let them fall into the abyss?" The thought of losing them sent a bolt of adrenaline through her. She didn't have time to lose. She glanced back at Evan and Lily, knowing that every moment spent hesitating drew them closer to danger. "Think, Sarah!" she screamed, her voice breaking. "What did I see?" Too late to save them now. The figure outside pressed against the window, smooth and grotesque. Face to face with her fears, it grinned wider, revealing endless darkness behind its teeth. "No!" She charged toward the window, propelled by desperation. Just as she reached it, a sharp crack echoed through the room. The glass splintered, fracturing in an explosion of cold air. She stumbled back, heart thundering as she turned. The shadow figure stood between her and the door now, a wall of despair and malice blocking her escape. Panic flooded her veins. The memories surged again, horrific flashes of fear mixed with choice. That night. She could either fight or flee. It all hinged on what lay buried inside her. She had to awaken the truth. "Remember the last choice you made, Sarah," the shadow man taunted, eyes narrowing. "You chose ignorance. And now? You may just have to pay for it." The room swirled around her as another flash of memory fought its way into her mind, too painful to bear. Would she have to go deeper into her past? To confront the truth she had avoided for so long? Could she wield it like a weapon against this darkness? Just then, the children gasped, pointing again towards the window. The pale figure was gone, but someone else was standing there, a familiar silhouette, bathed in moonlight, beckoning her closer. Sarah, the name echoed, but this time the voice was soothing, a reminder of safety in chaos. Who was it? Could it possibly be salvation, or another trick designed to lure her deeper into despair? She hesitated, knowing that every choice had consequences. "Remember or be consumed," the whispers urged as the looming shadow thing grinned, waiting for her to make the next move. Time was running out. What awaited her, deeper in the shadows of her own making? And how would she ever find the strength to face it? Sarah stood frozen, caught between two worlds. The familiar figure in the moonlight radiated warmth and hope, a stark contrast to the nightmare pressing in around her. "Come to me, Sarah," the soft voice coaxed, tinged with an urgency that made her heart race. "Don't," the shadow man hissed, his form shifting into something monstrous, rippling with anger. "Do not trust what you cannot see clearly. It led you away once before." The children whimpered behind her, eyes darting between the comforting silhouette and the growing menace. She felt their fear like a living thing, crawling under her skin. Could she really trust what she thought she knew? "Mommy, please." Evan's plea was barely a whisper. Lily shoved her face into her brother's shoulder, trembling. "Focus on your choice," the shadow man growled. "The truth is your enemy." Sarah's chest ached as she glanced back at the figure. Against the darkness pressing in, it seemed a beacon, easy to follow. Yet, a deep-set dread gnawed at her gut. What secrets lay beneath that familiar facade? What choice had that bright face obscured? "Mom!" Evan's voice cracked, desperation twisting his features. "We need to go. Now." The shadow man suddenly lunged forward, a sweeping motion that sent a gust of wind through the room. "You think you can escape? You can't run from your past." The gust was suffocating. It brushed against her like an icy hand, and Sarah stumbled back. Her instinct screamed at her to flee, yet her intuition pulled her closer to the light. She felt trapped, paralyzed by fear and indecision. "You love your children, don't you?" the shadow man inquired, the words dripping with malice. "But for them to be safe, you must remember." A gasp escaped her lips, awareness rushing back at her like a wave crashing against the shore. She was tangled in a web she'd spun herself. Every choice she'd made had consequences, leaving consequences tangled in the lives of those she loved. And then she remembered, the party, the laughter, the moment of bliss when she'd turned away. Hadn't she fled? "Mom!" Evan's voice cut through her whirlwind of memories. "Please." She gripped the edge of the window frame, torn between the beckoning figure and the looming shadow. She heard the whispers again, but there was clarity amid the chaos. "I must know," she muttered, even as her heart raced. With resolve, she stepped back toward the light. But a cold hand grabbed her wrist, strong, unyielding. Fear paralyzed her once again as the shadowy figure loomed closer. "No," she gasped. "Let me go." "Are you ready to face what you tried to forget?" it snarled. The tension twisted around her, tightening like a noose ready to snap. Dark memories surged, the final argument before the party, the faces of the friends who had turned enemies. Had she turned her back on them? "Mom!" Lily cried, lunging toward her. In that moment, everything shifted. The shadow's hand slid from her wrist, its face twisting into rage, but with each second, the familiar figure grew clearer, glowing with an almost ethereal light. "I remember!" Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through the darkness. "I remember everything." Suddenly, both figures flickered, battling for control of her mind. The memory of that night loomed larger, twisting and turning into the very shadows that had come to haunt her. The fleeting edges of bliss crashed into rejection and betrayal, all threatening to swallow her whole. But just as clarity broke the surface, the shadow man let out a scream of fury. With a terrifying fissure of sound, the room trembled. "What you recall will determine everything," it shrieked, fading as reality morphed around her. "Sarah!" A voice called back from the dark, unresolved echoes of memory tugging at her heart. Was it Brian? Another fragment of her past? Her heart raced as dread and anticipation knotted together once more. She had uncovered a truth, but could that truth save her children or bring about their end? The air crackled with tension, shadows swirling, and the familiar silhouette flickered. She took a deep breath, inches from the leaden truth of her choices, and stepped forward into the deeper shadows. What awaited her in this abyss? Would she find salvation or further damnation? As Sarah plunged into the darkness, her breath caught in her throat, the chill wrapping around her like a damp blanket. The world around her faded, but she could still feel the weight of Evan and Lily clinging to her, their small bodies trembling in the encroaching night. "Stay close," Sarah whispered, though her own voice trembled, uncertainty lacing her words. The shadows engulfed her, blotting out the last remnants of the familiar. Each step threatened to pull her deeper, blinding her to everything she thought she understood. Was the light still there behind her, or had it completely vanished? The air thickened with a thick, cloying scent, decay, or maybe something more sinister. She fought to keep panic at bay. The reminder of her children's presence grounded her, yet the Shadow Man's voice echoed in her mind. What you recall will determine everything. Mom? Evan's voice quivered, his hand reaching for hers in the dark. It sent a shiver down her spine, a reminder that the shadows weren't just a backdrop. They thrummed with energy, waiting to pounce. I'm here, she said, forcing calm into her tone as she swept her other arm around Lily. I won't let anything happen to you. As if triggered by her words, a low growl reverberated within the shadows. The sound pulsed, a deep, vibrating menace that raised the hair on the back of her neck. She focused on her surroundings, straining to find any sign of the familiar figure. Had it really vanished, or was it watching her, waiting for the right moment to strike? Mom, I don't like this, Evan whispered, his grip tightening around her hand. I know, she murmured, scanning the overlapping shadows. The darkness shifted, as if alive, lapping at the edges of her sanity. Suddenly, a flicker of light appeared ahead, an irregular glow within the gnarl of black. Is that she trailed off, hope and dread warring within her? But the moment her foot stepped forward, the light dimmed and flickered like a dying flame. Shadows whispered her name, Sarah, an unnerving harmony combining into a cacophony of her doubts. No! She shouted, clutching her children tighter. I want to listen to you. Her voice cracked, not entirely convincing even to herself. The shadows pulsed, weaving around her like a living web. They tugged at her, beckoning her memories forward. The fear twisted in her stomach like a knife, cutting deeply as faces flashed before her eyes, friends she once held dear, laughter turned to screams. A sudden chill raced up her spine, the room felt too constricted. Evan, Lily, we need to keep moving. Her voice steadied, a desperate command. But before she could turn her back on the darkness, a deep, guttural roar erupted from behind. You think you can escape? It bellowed, something shifting within the coalescing gloom. Her heart raced, pummeling against her ribs. She jerked around, scanning every direction, her mind reeling. We have to go now. Mom! Lily screamed. The shadow figure materialized, larger than before, its edges sharper, threatening. It slithered closer, eyes gleaming with malice. Your history is tainted. It snarled. You cannot save them while shackled to your past. Determination surged through Sarah, illuminating her resolve. No! She shouted, feeding off the fear she felt, channeling it into anger. I choose my family over your lies. In a moment of clarity, she plunged toward the flickering light, dragging her children along. They stumbled, but momentum propelled them forward. The shadow roared with rage, casting dark tendrils that lashed at her. Terror shot through her as she felt something cold grip her ankle. She barely glanced down, resolving to push through. Would she break free, or would the past swallow them whole? They reached the light, it pulsed, flickered, and surged. Sarah's heart raced faster, knowing a choice lay ahead, an intersection of shadow and despair. As she reached for the light, the ground trembled, and a voice, not the Shadow Man, but something else entirely, whispered ominously, "What will you sacrifice for truth?" Was this the salvation she sought, or another trap? And as she crossed the threshold, the darkness roared anew behind them, the chill more pronounced than ever, as if daring her to look back what lay beyond the light. Would it be the redemption she yearned for, or a deeper night that would consume everything? As Sarah plunged into the glow, an unsettling warmth enveloped her, contrasting the frigid shadows behind. It was not the warmth of safety, but rather an eerie embrace that promised something darker. Light seeped into her vision, revealing a new scene. The ground beneath was bare dirt, twisted roots creeping up like skeletal fingers. She shuddered and tightened her grip around Evan and Lily, pulling them closer. The light flickered erratically as if it had a pulse, and in that dance, Sarah saw glimpses, fragments of memories, both sweet and haunting, swirling like leaves caught in a whirlwind. Where are we, Mom? Evan's voice trembled, breaking through her haze of fear. She hesitated. I don't know. But we have to stay together. The scene shifted around them. The light grew dimmer, and shadows began stretching forth, clawing at the edges of their sanctuary. Each snap of twigs threatened to unravel her courage. She had to make a choice, but what? The very air hummed with implications, choices made in desperation, sacrifices looming like thunderheads. As she moved forward, the whispers from the shadows twisted through the air, each hiss seeping into her thoughts. To unravel your past, you must embrace the shadows. Their voices were deceptive, enticing, and around her, the threads of danger began to vibrate in harmonic dread. Mom! Lily's voice sliced through the thick fog of uncertainty. What are they saying? With every ounce of determination, Sarah squeezed her children's hands. They want to confuse us. We must ignore them. But those voices, fusing with her scattered memories, tugged at something deep inside. Visions surged, a childhood dream, an innocent wish turned bitter. The face of a friend forgotten, replaced by darkest regret. Suddenly, the light surged and pulled her, urging her away from the specters rising in the dirt. It flickered desperately as it battled the creeping shadows that slinked back and forth like hungry hawks. What will you give? A voice rasped directly in her ear, a promise laced with menace. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the depths of the light. A woman, distorted but familiar, her eyes trapped under a veil of shadow. Sarah, she begged, voice a haunting echo of love and loss. Help me. Mom? Sarah gasped, almost grasping the truth swirling around her. No. A chorus of shadows erupted. Do not listen. Mom! Lily cried again, a sound of pure fear. The shadow figure expanded, limbs grotesque, distorting into shapes that mocked them with laughter. You seek to save what is lost. Your reality shatters in shadows unrealized. Just breathe. Sarah shouted, desperately trying to anchor her children amidst the chaos. She felt their trembling heat and knew she had to act. With heart pounding, she stepped closer to the flickering light, arms spread wide. Get back. The voice demanded, sounding vastly different now, as if the shadows were conversing in fear. You don't belong here. But Sarah felt the truth in the darkness. You don't define me. I will not be your puppet. The ground shook, fissures exposing darker layers beneath. A maelstrom of shadows grasped at her ankles, pulling with icy claws, the light flaring wildly. Make a choice. The shadow woman shrieked, her voice becoming a twisted laugh. What are you willing to sacrifice? Time slowed as Sarah's breath quickened. The choice loomed heavy in the air, a terrible impasse teetering at the edge of her will. Could she truly save them, or would choosing light mean losing them forever? And as the edges of the flickering glow began to fade, a chilling truth stole into her mind. Perhaps in the sacrifice of the past, something even more pernicious awaited them in the flickering shadows of the unknown. With that realization, the shadows began to close in tighter, smothering her hope beneath their weight. Will you save your children, or will you abandon them to darkness? The echo clung to her, a final taunt before the last light flickered out. As the last light trembled, Sarah's heart raced against an onslaught of fear. Time stretched, each second a suffocating ocean as shadows lunged for her resolve. Despite the encroaching darkness, a fierce surge of love for her children ignited within her. She wouldn't let the shadows claim them. Evan, Lily, hold on to me. She cried, as she felt the tendrils of darkness wrapping around her ankles, pulling her down. We'll face this together. Mom, I don't want to be here. Evan sobbed, his eyes wide with terror. Neither do I. Sarah shouted, pumping her legs forward with every ounce of strength she had, dragging her children along like lifelines through the quagmire of fear and uncertainty. The shadows recoiled at her defiance, hissing in displeasure. You cannot escape your fate. The voices hissed, ethereal and cold. The ground trembled beneath them, a rift opening wide, threatening to swallow everything: hope, memories, and love into the abyss. But Sarah's heart surged with warmth, the memories of laughter and love flaring brightly against the darkness. It was all so clear now. A choice had to be made, but it wasn't about sacrificing her kids. It was about keeping them safe, no matter the stakes. Together. She shouted once more, the word ringing out like a defiant bell, a rallying cry against despair. She felt Evan squeeze her hand tightly, the small warmth of her children igniting a bright fire within her. Then something shifted. It was as if the flickering light had heard her call. It pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, brightening as determination filled the void. This was her shield against the storm gathered around them. "Let us go." Sarah plunged into the glow, dragging her children behind, rallying against the congealed shadows, making one last desperate lunge to trap them. She could feel it. Light was within reach, pulling her, refusing to let them go. As they crossed into the light, a blinding flash exploded, illuminating everything around them in stark clarity. The darkness hissed and reared as if physical, clawing at them but failing to break their grasp on each other. Suddenly, they were thrust into a beautiful field bathed in golden sunlight. Sarah gasped. Lush greenery surrounded them, birds swooped and danced in the blue of the heavens above, a stark contrast to the dark grasp of Ashford Hollow. Still gripping Evan and Lily's hands, she marveled at the unexpected beauty. "Mom?" Lily asked, peering into the bright sky, her face washing with fear and wonder. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're safe, for now," Sarah said, determination lacing her voice. But even as she spoke, the shadows lurked at the edges, a creeping reminder of the past she couldn't fully escape. They whispered of choices, of memories that threatened to rise again. The specter of her ex loomed in the back of her mind, a remnant of pain that echoed with the darkness she just faced. "What did we just do?" Evan's voice trembled as he scanned the scenery, searching for danger. "I think we made a choice," she replied, the gravity of it weighing heavily upon her. "We faced our past. We stood against it. But did that truly mean they were free?" The sun burned bright around them, but shadows threatened to engulf their bright haven. "I can't lose you," she whispered to her kids, a knot of fear and love spiraling tightly in her chest. "Mom," Evan started, eyes wide with worry. "Trust me," Sarah interrupted, a fierce light igniting in her heart. "We will find a way to keep the darkness at bay. Together. While we remember the love and the strength that brought us here." The whispers began to fade, the shadows retreating against the warmth radiating from their bond, but she couldn't help feeling that the specter of her past still loomed somewhere. She took a deep breath, pushing the remnants of fear deep down. They stood as a family, resolute and united against the thrumming pulse of their fears, ready to face whatever happened next. With fingers laced together, they stepped forward into the field, each step an act of defiance against the darkness. "Where do we go now?" Evan asked, a glimmer of hope breaking through his fear. "Wherever we want," Sarah replied, courage surging within her. Freedom lay ahead, a journey they would take together, one they would face together, and she wouldn't let the shadows reclaim what was theirs. As they strode into the unknown, Sarah felt the warmth of the sun enveloping them like a shield against whatever haunted shadows awaited. For every choice they made and every memory shared, they forged a path out not just of the dark, but toward a new beginning. They turned their backs to the shadows, ready to embrace their future. Together, Sarah whispered to the breeze, a vow echoing in the sunlight. In the distance, laughter filled the air. A promise of hope. That was all they ever needed. Now, as the dust settled on the battlefield of her fears, it was time to step into the light of a new day, built on not just memories, but the bonds of love that would last a lifetime. Please, don't forget to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans, this is your moment to show support and keep the magic alive.